I will go ahead. Thank you, Lisa. I will I will go ahead and put this registration link in the chat as we go into our breakout room so that you have it when we come back. Community commitments, as always, move up, move back. So obviously we want everyone to participate, but because we want everyone to participate, everyone needs time to participate. 2, no one knows everything, but together we know a lot. Let's learn together. This is a pretty seasoned group of activists here. You've been in the public education space for most of you a lot longer than I have, and I've enjoyed learning from you. Contribute your piece. Everybody has something unique to add here, and also listens to others as well, which brings us to our third point, which is presume positive intent, but acknowledge our impact here. If somebody says something that we don't like, for example, or that we disagree with, we're all in here to do the same thing, which is move public education funding along so that our teachers and our students can have the resources that they need for generations to come. And so if there are any misunderstandings, anything like that, we settle those with the presumption that we are all here to do the same thing and that nobody is going after anybody personally, etc. All right, so as usual, we are going to have a listen, a learn, and a lead component to this meeting. Tonight, our listen question, I think, is something that I hope you all enjoy. It was something that took a little more thinking on our end than usual. But I want you to think of a few legislative referrals related to school funding, or even just campaigns you've worked on in the past. So Prop CC is one that comes to mind for us, obviously. Given an earlier start, aka earlier chance to get grassroots volunteering, basically, what grassroots opportunity strategies and tactics would make success in the long run more likely, in your opinion? So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. Lisa, would you mind pausing the recording?
One of the things that we talked about that would be interesting to see, because of the new ballot issue that passed, with the rewrite of how these ballot issues would actually be written so that people would know just exactly, or at least ballparking, what they would be paying, instead of seeing a gigantic figure at the beginning, you know, of a ballot issue, and see if that would make a change.
Yeah, that's something I think that has been talked about, and I think personally would be really valuable. Just because I think that the reason that we've lost numerous things or haven't come as close as we wanted to is that people just simply didn't have the facts if they weren't outside of the education community. And while that doesn't work sometimes, in this case, I think it works really, really well, because it shows you exactly what you are paying or are not paying in the case of most people. So oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Has anybody looked at each one of these attempts at getting school funding to try to determine with each one what the main reason was that it failed? And you know, and that way have a pathway, you know, to think about how you would educate the public then.
I would say we've been so great about it. I mean, Lisa has been phenomenal. We have blown a lot of minds. It comes to me, it comes down to, for us, that people feel like they are already paying for public education. So asking for more is difficult.
They need to look at across the states. I was shocked when we moved to Colorado to see what the school funding was here. So
I would just say, Kathy, that there are analyses like that, and we're always trying to learn moving forward. And that's actually gets, I'll toss it back to Ben here to hear what folks said about, from what, you know, what strategies and tactics should we look to the future to try to ensure success.
Mhm.
I guess to piggyback off Lisa's point there, heard some good stuff already, but let's talk about what we talked about in our breakout rooms. So what are these opportunities, strategies, tactics that would make success more likely? If you were able, as a volunteer, as a grassroots supporter of education, to get involved earlier on in the process, what would those things be, and how would they make a difference?
We didn't quite get to the topic in our group that well, but one of the things that I brought up is that if in your specific community, your school, your district, whatever, there's something that coalesces your parents together. I came from Crested Butte, and in our case, it was no cafeteria last year, or very little, and basically no transportation. And this year, no transportation. And that opened people's eyes and brought it close to home. So somehow we need to bring it close to home to people so that they respond.
I think that's a great point, Christy. So given that, does anybody have anything to add from their communities to what Christy just said?
Tessa and Wendy had some good ideas.
Oh my, what Christy just said is the only way to reach people. We actually had a meeting with our district yesterday about a potential bond and mill for 2023. And we all sort of sat in the room and we were like, well, what's the story? What's the gravitas? What is hurting? What can people relate to? And sometimes that's hard to find given the challenge that lays in front of us.
I think it's also that it's, well, when you get into the state issues, we're very vast and different communities across the state. So trying to find that message that resonates with the East Coast and the Western slopes, and that's difficult. But I think, that consistent advocacy that Great Ed has been doing, I think, is what we have to continue to do and keep working those networks. I think we talked in our group a little bit about the great presentations that we've done to different communities and community groups as we've done the different campaigns through the years, and how much I think that has such an impact when you have a person standing in front of a group, whether it's 10, 15 or 20 people, and you give that presentation and then you can have that dialogue. I just think that those are so much more impactful than writing emails, or any ad campaign you can come up with.
We had a couple of, when things were really going south for us in Eagle County and really statewide, Lisa came up and spoke at 2 different events, and we fed people. So I think that should be number 1 on everyone's list, give free food. And I don't know, Lisa, what was your experience of those events? I mean, we had record turnout.
I was blown away by the turnout. I think there were a few things that were effective. We had great questions. There had been a lot of prep to get folks to those meetings, but probably one of the best things that happened was that there was a curmudgeon there who disagreed profusely with what I was talking about, and I got the sense that was somebody who has pretty commonly played that role. And so by responding to those concerns, I think it made people realize that there are answers to that you can, when somebody comes in and plays that role of the spoiler, that you really can energize other people by responding to it. So I don't think that was what he intended, but I think that's what happened.
So we need a plant for all future talks. Is that what you're saying?
I think in the course of petitioning for 93, I mean, for me, it was very clear, and I did it both up in Gunnison County and down in Boulder and Louisville and this area is teacher pay. And people care about their teachers and they know their teachers are not being paid. And that was a commonality.
Our group talked about what networks you have, and had the, CEA gotten on board a little earlier, teachers are overburdened, and maybe the first thing they're not doing is say, how could I get involved and do something new? But had they known about that, if we got all the teachers to sign this petition, we'd have been in like Flint. And the same goes to any other networks, because a lot of parents say, like, I'm doing everything I can with my kid and I go to things at school, but I may not hear things like this if they don't have a personal connection with someone who's involved in that. So making sure the networks get involved early on, and making sure their constituents or whatever have knowledge of what's going on. And then I threw out something in the get-go about, why can't we have electronic signatures? We're kind of moving that way in a lot of things. And, that's not the first thing about, getting on the ballot again, but man, maybe we should work on that a little bit. I don't know. It's probably hard, but got to work on it.
I love what you just said. It made me insane that every single teacher in Eagle County didn't have their signature on my petition. It actually hurt my feelings after all the work that's done.
That's a huge issue, and getting CE. I mean, I think we need to put lots of pressure on CEA. My daughter knew, because I knew. She got 800 signatures. If every teacher had known in June, we would have had the signatures.
Listening. I'm in one of those meetings.
Can you please mute if you are not talking?
And I don't blame the teachers. I mean, like I said, they don't go out and open their email and say, what more can I do, and get involved more, because they're overwhelmed. But if they got a little email,
they did not get notified.
Yeah.
It was the leadership of CEA that did not let them know.
And I would add to that, the PTAs. We found out about it at the Colorado PTA convention, and we were like like hell on fire trying to get signatures in our community. But I didn't ever get any more communication from our Jeffco PTA or Colorado PTA to try and push it and make sure that the PTAs all around the state were doing the same thing.
I don't know. We were everywhere, and teachers still didn't step up.
So I think
go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to say, I'm hearing a lot of common threads here. It looks like community organizing is a big thing. And having community events is crucially important to getting people on board early and making sure that they stay the course all the way through a campaign. And so I'm wondering, like, we've heard a lot of things. We have about 5 minutes left in our discussion portion here. So we've heard a lot of things about what the issues are right now. So what, I guess, and these can be completely out of left field, but what are some solutions you would propose to get organizations like PTA, like CEA on board, to increase your community outreach on more generic issues like school funding in general, or on issues like cafeteria workers, bus drivers, and other people like that not making a living wage and not being able to be hired in the first place?
Ben, I would hope that I mean, having more specific details in the referendum or the prop, whatever it is, right? That may say this is for teacher pay or this is for educator pay, not just for education. And doing those things would help some of these specific groups that we're talking about, right? It makes it a lot harder for them to, in the past, sit on the fence about it, and it almost tells them either support it or don't, but you can't just sit on the fence and say we're not out there. And so I think having those specific details, in the wording may help a lot. can't guarantee it. I wish I could.
Yeah.
I
And
think
then,
it's a good starting point.
yeah, Christy just commented in the chat about starting earlier. And as I was thinking through the last petition drive, I carried a petition, but it was through the summertime. And if I want to get the school community involved, I need to have access through, to petitions and to information before the school year ends, because we had to have those petitions turned in just right as, or not too long after, I can't remember exactly, school started. And so I didn't have an opportunity to tap into the volleyball games, the football games, the softball games, and those kinds of things, where a lot of parents and people that I could network with were there. So that was tough, thinking back on it, that was really hard to do that. For me.
Can I just follow up on that, Diana, and just ask if this is, there's petitioning on, and if something is referred, that means that the petitioning process isn't necessary, but grassroots is. So do you, and this is a question to everybody, have ideas about, if it's not about petitioning, what kinds of tactics and strategies would be helpful in April and May before school is out to engage people more? And then again, back when school is coming back in August and September.
Well, at this point, it takes me a little while to process, but yeah, I can, information, I guess, just information, that's what we need. We are going to do this. This is what we're going to do. We may be bound a bit by deadlines and that kind of thing. I'm not exactly sure how the laws read as far as that is concerned, but yeah, we just need to have a direction. Give us something to talk about, I guess. Give us the information that we can take to those groups and to those people, that kind of thing. I mean, yeah, they know that teachers need to be paid more, but what are we going to do about it? I don't know. That kind of thing. Give me something specific. I need something more concrete to take to the people with more information, so that I can give them valid and honest and information that is going to come to fruition, I guess. I don't know.
I think that's a wonderful point. It's like, if the car has no gas, then we can't go forward. So even if we have the structure built, but we don't have the content we need, it's going to be difficult. Christy, I'm going to have you be our last person for this portion, and then we are going to go ahead and transition, but go right ahead.
I just wrote it in the chat, but it occurs to me that when you have a reason to walk up to people and talk to them face to face, or email them and have them do some type of action, that really helps awareness. So something like a promise to vote, kind of like petitioning, even though you don't need the signatures, but I don't know, just something like that.
I think that's a wonderful point. And so after we hear our next portion here, to close things out, I'm going to go ahead and put a volunteer interest form in the chat for specifically what we're working on now. And it's also going to have a spot where you can put what you think would be a good idea. So you don't just necessarily have to pick from what's there. You can also insert your opinion. And I think we heard a lot of good ones here. So hopefully we see some of that reflected in the form. But now I am going to go ahead and share my screen real quick, and we're going to go ahead and move into our next portion. All right. Sorry, my top bar is blocking me from, there we go. Okay, so yesterday the legislative session started, and Senator Steve Fenberg was quoted as saying this yesterday: let's make another historic investment that isn't just a one-year windfall, but instead is done in a way that is sustainable and long-term, and a long-term promise to our teachers, students, and parents. So that appeared in Chalkbeat today. And I can't think of a better way to, a better, spirit for the kickoff of the legislative session than this. Tonight to talk about a potential solution, although not an entire solution to this problem, is Representative Kathy Kipp from Fort Collins. Now, we've been talking a lot about Initiative 63 for the past year or so, and you have helped us push that narrative forward. And now it's an extension of that. A part of that is in the legislature, and it is part of that narrative that you have been pushing forward. In other words, it wouldn't be here without you. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over. Anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Representative Kipp in just a second. But before I do, this is a graphic that we came up with a while ago that you may have seen that circulated some places. And it says, voters want to do right by teachers, tell legislative candidates. So this was during the elections. Let us vote for better pay for all public school staff. And at the bottom here, it says Tolchin Research, June 2022. So that's a poll that found 68% of Coloradans, of respondents, support directing a portion of existing income tax revenues to pay teachers and student support staff without raising taxes. Now that idea is still alive and well. And to talk more about how it may look in the legislature, I will go ahead and turn it over to Representative Kathy Kipp.
Hey, thank you everybody for having me here tonight. Sorry, I've been trying to drive my aide home and stuff. She wanted to come see the inauguration today and she can't drive. So at any rate, thank you for having me. So yeah, what we've been talking about this year is sort of a riff on what y'all did back with 63. So it's not exactly what happened with 63. And I'd say there's a key difference in that, people get really confused when you start talking about 1/3 of 1%, and then legislators in particular, especially if you've been there a while, you get that our budget situation is dire. And so if we start saying, well, you can take, and that 1/3 of 1% might go below the Tabor cap, right? And we need the money. I mean, the legislature already has the ability, if there were any money there, and the budget thing is a whole nother story, to give you any money, to give education any money that is below the Tabor cap. What we don't have the ability to do without the voters' permission is to give you money above the Tabor cap, right? So what we're trying to do is I have a bill that is a referendum, and fortunately, Rachel Zenzinger, Senator Zenzinger, who is the JBC chair, joined onto it with me as my Senate prime sponsor. And what we're doing with this is we're actually saying, well, let's take all the money above the Tabor cap. Now, when I say all, there's also the homestead exemption portion, which that's kind of a sacred cow. People don't want to give up the homestead exemption. And then the other thing is voters just voted to do the affordable housing piece. And some of that money, well, most of it hopefully will come from above the Tabor cap. So other than those two things, we're just saying, the referendum says we want to keep all the money above the Tabor cap, and we want to use that to benefit PK through 12 or preschool through 12 education. And we want to use that money to attract and retain teachers and student support staff. So it's pretty simple. And yeah, that's basically what it is.
Thank you.
And I mean, I can talk a lot about it. I will tell you that it is a Band-Aid solution. It is not a permanent solution. And what I've been telling everybody, and there was actually an article someone pointed out to me in the Colorado Sun today, which, yeah, I describe it there as a Band-Aid because it's not long-term sustainable school funding. And we need long-term sustainable school funding. And this is just preventing us from falling off the fiscal cliff. Because I will tell you that the state and federal government have been putting a lot of one-time money into education, right? And so that money keeps going up and up and up. But a lot of that's one-time money. And so when we run out of that one-time money, it goes down. So we need to stop that from happening. And so what this does is, I don't know if it's just for stalling the fiscal cliff or how long it'll help us for, but ultimately we would like to be able to have that solution. But for now, this is what we got. So right now I have 35 co-sponsors of the 100 people in the legislature. Well, I shouldn't say sponsors and co-sponsors. I have a couple more people who are probably going to sign on at least before the bill is introduced. And that's where we are. But we really want to be part of the conversation at the Capitol. And I guess I will explain how this works just really quick. So what happens with a bill that is a referendum? First of all, this is statutory. It's not constitutional. Statutory means that we only have to have 50% plus one of the people in the House vote for it, and 50% plus one of the people in the Senate vote for it. We have larger majorities than probably we've ever had, at least in the House, and I think pretty close in the Senate. We actually have something called a supermajority in the House, and we have a one vote shy of a supermajority in the Senate. So I'm really sure we could get this passed and on to the ballot, and then it would only require 50% plus one of the electorate to vote for it. It does not require that higher bar of 55% because it's not constitutional. So that's sort of the basic thrust of what we're trying to do this year. And, you know, we at least want to make sure that we're part of the conversation. I understand that there's a lot of different ideas and proposals flying around the Capitol, but I wanted to get mine out of the gate first. That's why it's what we call a pre-file bill, which means it's my very first bill of session. It has not yet been introduced, but it hopefully will be, say, by the end of the week, hopefully.
Great, thank you, Representative. I guess we will open it up to questions. Christy has one in the chat. So will the need for UPK dollars help get the governor on board?
You know, I don't know what will get the governor on board necessarily, but the governor doesn't have to sign it, right? If it's a referendum to the voters, we just send it there and see what happens. So it's not necessary for the governor to be on board in this situation because he doesn't get to sign it, he doesn't get to veto it, none of that. It would be nice if he didn't totally say, well, I think that's a terrible idea. And he could do that, but you know, we will see what happens. Again, this is conversations that just because this is the way the bill has been introduced doesn't mean that that's necessarily all of the way it's going to end up, but we want to at least have the conversation. So my guess is what will happen with this bill is we'll get it introduced and then we will continue having more conversations around the building, which includes the first floor, which if you're not familiar, that's the Gov's territory.
Great, other questions?
I think, this is Jan, I think that before, great ed uses a lot of brain power and legwork to get something else on the ballot, it'd be nice to see if this happens sooner than later. So we would know where we are rather than wait until the middle of May to find out if this is a referred measure. I don't know what the chances of that are. Will it get stalled or will it be fast tracked?
I think, as I said, I think it's going to get introduced, but I think there is a need to have a lot of conversations before it comes to committee. So I wouldn't expect it to be like in the first few weeks, but I expect something will happen. Nancy, that's a great question. She asked if there was open opposition from Democrats or Republicans. Actually, as I said, I have 35 Democratic people sponsoring or co-sponsoring the bill so far. I'm working on getting more. And I know at least one or two more have said that they'll sign on, and Rachel Zenzinger is working on it in the Senate on getting co-sponsors. However, the Republicans are unlikely to sign on because the Republicans, Tabor is a sacred cow. They love Tabor. They love their tax refunds, even though they usually don't even know they're getting them. So I think that's going to be unlikely. And if there's more questions, I can't see it. I'm on my phone. I'm sorry. I am stopped and I am not driving, I promise.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised with your Senate co-sponsor, because she has said that there will be no way of funding the BS factor this year because of its long-term impact. Yet she's supporting this.
Well, so the budget's a different thing. This is allowing us to potentially get more money, but we won't, even if this passes, it's only asking the voters. And so we won't know until, if this passes the House and the passes the Senate, goes to the voters, we won't know until after the vote in November if this is a go or not, right? And then there's some people who think that we should wait till, 2024 and do something then, because that's a better year to get voters out. I mean, right now I'm pretty much interested in 2023, because with the majorities we have, we could always put something on the ballot again in 2024 if we were able to get it on this year. Of course, you don't want the stuff that you send to the ballot to fail, because that makes it more challenging for the following year. So there's a lot of considerations, but I think where Rachel is coming from is, given the money that we have now, it's going to be really a very challenging funding year for everything.
I just want to thank you for doing this, Representative Kip, first of all, and stepping up. And I know you came to us, I mean, this was something that you came to the legislature to do. And for those of you who don't know, Representative Kip gathered somewhere between 4,000 and 4,500 signatures for Amendment 10.3 a few years ago. So I just wanted to thank you for that and ask, how can we help you?
And then Lisa, after that question, we're going to go to Sue. You look like you had a question before that.
Oh, well, how can you help? I mean, really, if you would like to email your legislators and tell them and ask them to sponsor the education funding referendum. As I said, I'm hoping the bill will be introduced later this week. But if, even if so how it works is that you can either co-sponsor something pre-introduction, or you have to wait until it goes through the committee and gets through the third reading in the House to do it. So basically, if people are able to sponsor it by the end of this week, that's wonderful. And we thank them, we love them, we appreciate it. If not, we'd like them to at least support it on the floor. And we'd like to at least make people aware that we're having this conversation. And for legislators, it's really important for them to know that the people who are in their district support them, right? Because there are people lining up to oppose us, because if you looked at the article today, I guess Michael Fields is like, yeah, we just need to keep our Tabor because Tabor is like the best. And I'm here to tell you it's not.
Well, I was going to say one thing about.
Yeah, we've got Sue up next, and then we'll have you go.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's a great strategy, and, just getting on the ballot is so huge because we already know that 68% of the people supported the idea. So even in an off year voting, you could get more of your activists out to vote, and it might actually be better. I don't know, but yeah, getting on the ballot, I mean, that is so huge. So I'm just very appreciative that you're willing to undertake it and that you have so much support already. So I don't know if you want to share who you already have on who we should be contacting.
Well, I would be happy to share that list with Lisa, and I'm sure she could get it out to all of you if that works.
Okay, I can send an email tonight too, and I see my compadre Nancy Todd, Senator Todd's here. So we can both email our Aurora delegation anyway, if they're not already on.
Yeah, I mean, I know like Judah is on, she's Aurora. Well, Rachel's obviously on. I don't remember who else is Aurora. I don't think
Janet
Fields.
Buckner is on. Janet's Aurora, right? She would be great to get on.
Janet Buckner and Rhonda Fields.
Rhonda Fields is on.
Okay.
But Lisa, I don't know if I mean, I don't know that I'd put it out in a huge email, but if you, I think I could share that list with you, and you're welcome to let at least the folks on this call know who we already have as co-sponsors.
We can do that. And if people have specific questions, I can answer them. I can pull it up and take a look at who's there. So if you want to put it in the chat, I can let you know.
So we'll go Christy, Nancy, and then Frank.
All I was going to say is about the timing of 2023. You know, at the end of the petitioning and when we had to pull the petition in July, I know for myself, I really had a lot of people like in tears. And we talked about the fact that this isn't the end, we're taking the fight. So I think we've got momentum that we can pull right back up. I think waiting to 2024, we might lose some of the momentum that we created.
Yeah, I agree. I think the pandemic has created additional momentum and awareness of the problems that we've had. So I'm hopeful that that will play into it. But I think one of the challenge things we have is that voters this year received a $750 tax rebate, at least most people did. And when, you know, and that's only a one-time thing, right? That happened once and it's not going to happen again. The governor agreed to a one-time equitable distribution of the money and it was needed. Yeah, I get it. But people might think that's going to happen again. And that's, I think, a concern. But we'll see how it plays out.
Thank you. Nancy? I think, oh, you had a question in the chat. Do you see other big demands on public education as agendas go?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we all know that teachers have been asked to do more with less. Education, public education in general in Colorado has been asked to do more than with less. I actually had a couple of my colleagues say that, well, could we add higher education into this? And I've had somebody else say, could we add something else into this, right? There's lots of needs and demands in our state because of the budgetary pinch we're in. So right now we're focusing this on pre-K through 12 education, but we do know that with all the things that we've asked our teachers to do, and I know in the legislature, we're terribly guilty of it. Every one of us has like our great, you know, answer for education. If you only did this, our schools would be great, right? And so unfortunately, a lot of the money that some of the money we have, not a lot of it, but some of it, depends on how you define a lot, gets piddled away in silly little grant programs. And I'm sorry, but that's a real frustration of so many people in the education committee, right? Yeah. Let's just give our money to our local school districts and let them spend it in the way that's going to most benefit their districts. Really, that's what we should be doing, in my opinion.
So Kathy, if I can add on to what I had put on in the chat room is also kind of what you just said. All the let's fix this, let's fix that, with all the different little bills and different things are detractors. There's no question about it. And so I think that contributes to the confusion when people say, well, we want to give more money to teacher salaries. Why doesn't the legislature just vote that way? And obviously we know and understand why they don't. And a big piece of this is making sure that the opposition of going to the people and letting the people vote is going to be what you're fighting. Because as you said, the Tabor lovers don't necessarily want to compromise that and don't want to put that to a vote. And so the privatization of school, public education, all of those different things that are going to continue coming are going to be a battle, as well as pushing forward for this to be on the ballot for people to be able to vote for. Am I correct on that?
Well, I'd say so. And I guess I would also say that, and I just totally lost my train of thought. But yeah, no, absolutely 100%. I think you're right on the mark, because we just need to get people to understand where we are with education. And I think that we've come a long ways in doing that. People understand that we have some of the worst paid teachers in the entire country, right? That's not okay. And by the way, we also have a second JBC member as a co-sponsor, and that is Senator Jeff Bridges. So I have my two Democrats who are our JBC members. Would love to get my two House Democrats on board. But as far as, the Republicans and Tabor, it is a challenge. But I think, oh, that's what I was going to say, right. The thing about Tabor is you can just tell Republicans, and even if you have a Republican legislator yourself, that's who represents you, you can say, this bill is doing exactly what Tabor says. This bill is saying, let's go to the ballot and ask the voters. And that's what Tabor says to do. And so that's what we're doing.
Frank.
Hi, Representative Kip, and thanks again for doing this. That was I had two comments or two questions, and that was my first one is just a reminder and remembrance to everybody that this is a referendum just to ask people to vote on this. It's not saying give the money. It's just saying, hey, we're doing exactly what Tabor says to do, which is ask the people for the money. And so in my mind, any Republican that wants to fight that is simply saying we don't like Tabor the way it is. But that's politics. The second piece, and you mentioned this right off the bat, and I think it's really important to continue speaking of this, is we know what's going to happen in 2024 with the fiscal cliff, right? When ESSER money runs out, when there's just a gob of one-time money that was infused into schools, and all of that's going to be gone in 2024. Plus, our own state budget doesn't appear to look that great in 2024. And so the idea of getting some extra money while it's there to kind of help cover that 2024, 2025, those couple of budget years, I think is really also a key to helping get support behind this, because we're talking about teacher pay now. What's it going to need to be in 2 or 3 years when, we're probably looking at cuts elsewhere. And so to secure that money now may be really, really important for that.
Yeah, and we really want to forestall that fiscal cliff, because since we've been spending down the state education fund, I don't know where else we're going to get money right now. Thank you. Thanks for all your work on it, Frank. I know you've been doing a lot.
And we have time for one more question here, and then we're going to hit some quick housekeeping stuff at the end and then let you go. But if anybody has one more question, we can go ahead and do that. Anybody who hasn't asked, who has, that's fine.
Just a big thank you to Kathy, a huge thank you to both you and Rachel for being bold enough to step forward and to carry this with the legislature, and both of you being leaders in the House and in the Senate. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys for all being continued education advocates, right? We've all been in this battle for a long time, and hopefully we'll make some progress, because that's what it's all about. So fingers crossed, and we'll see what the session brings. We're only on day 2. Well, day 2's done, 118 to go.
Great. Thank you so much, Representative Kip, for coming out and talking to us tonight. And we will get to writing our legislators, if not to co-sponsor, then to support this on the floor. All right, just a few sort of end of the night things before we set you on your way. Grade Ed has just a few things for sort of Grade Ed related. We have a new newsletter. It's going to be bi-weekly. That's coming out. It's going to feature student voice, our new student intern, and then updates from partner organizations, among other things. And then, so that'll be every other week. It either went out tonight or it'll be going out tomorrow morning. But so then not next week, but the next week we'll have our next iteration and so forth. Other than that, we are starting to build a communications plan, and I'll actually let Lisa talk a little bit about that. And for the coming legislative session, not for necessarily the bill, but just I'll let Lisa talk about it.
I will, and I do want to say that we have an action we created an action that would let people ask their legislators to co-sponsor, but unfortunately our system has not yet switched over to the new legislature. So we would have been writing to people who are no longer in the legislature. So as soon as that's what we're waiting for, is to have our action platform catch up to now. So we're just excited that there's a lot of momentum on communications. You will be, we'll keep you informed about just sort of a bigger plan to let the legislature know that they cannot leave until they have done something to address our teacher shortage in a very powerful, just a concerted effort to just make sure that message is out there to help support Representative Kip and others who are trying to make long-term significant change. So that's just sort of a preview. We'll probably talk more about it in February, which will be a very important Advocates Network meeting, because we'll have an update on what's happened once we're 30 days into the 120 days.
Great, thank you, Lisa. And what I just dropped in the chat, that Google Doc, is that form that we were talking about earlier for volunteer preferences. So if you could please fill that out. If you're running into any trouble, like we sometimes do with forms, please let me know. It requires access. Nice. Which is a problem. So I will go, I will go fix that real quick. But would love for you to, and we'll send that out again in the recap email, so we can catch even more people who have volunteered in the past. So we'll all have a chance to give our input, and then we will come back with the results and more what we're doing in February, and hopefully even before then. If you want to stick on for a few more minutes, that's great. I'm going to hang out. Lisa may as well. Lisa, if you want to go ahead and stop the recording, that would be great.